and woke up on Friday with the feeling that this day was going to be a turning point. A light March rain drizzled outside, but her mood was lifted. Yesterday, she'd received an email from the company director announcing a bonus for the successful completion of the shopping complex project. $150,000. The number didn't even seem real. She opened her laptop and logged into her banking app. The total on the screen made her catch her breath. $600,000. 3 years of meticulous saving, cutting out pointless expenses, strict budgeting, and now an unexpected bonus. She could finally buy what she dreamed of for the last 5 years, a house outside the city, and poured herself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table. 38 years old, head of procurement at a major construction company. $15,000 a month plus quarterly bonuses. Her career was solid. Her personal life, stable. 11 years married to Roger. No kids yet, but it had never been a problem. Her husband was a long-haul truck driver making about $5,000 a month, often away on the road. The arrangement suited them both. She opened a real estate website and started browsing listings. Most were through agencies, which automatically added a realtor's fee, and scrolled through page after page, eliminating unsuitable options. Too far from the city. Too old. Needed major repairs. Overpriced. After 20 minutes, one ad caught her eye. It didn't have the usual agency watermark. A private seller was offering a house in the town of Riverside, 30 kilometers from Portland. 2-story cottage, about 1,500 square feet, 1/3 acre lot, all utilities, built 7 years ago. Price, $560,000. Nearly $40,000 cheaper than comparable listings in the area. And called the number listed. A man with a raspy, older-sounding voice answered. Boris Kromov speaking. Hi, I'm calling about the house for sale in Riverside. I'd like to see it. Would this afternoon work? Of course. I'll be waiting around 2 o'clock. He gave her the address and wrote it down and mapped the route on her GPS, 37 minutes with normal traffic. Totally doable for daily commuting if needed. At 1:30, and got into her white Honda and headed for the highway. The rain had stopped, the sun peeked out. On the way, she mentally went over what to check: foundation, roof condition, plumbing, wiring, property documents. After 11 years in construction, she could evaluate a building like a pro. Riverside greeted her with neat streets and new houses. The infrastructure looked good: grocery store, school, daycare, bus stop. She turned onto Maple Street and slowed near house number 23. A 2-story red brick home with white window frames, solid and well-kept. Asphalt shingled roof, metal fence, the gates slightly open. A man in his 70s stepped out to meet her, wearing a knitted sweater and house pants. Anne, come in, come in. I'm Boris Kromov. He led her through the house, describing each room. First floor, spacious living room, kitchen, bathroom, small pantry. Second floor, 3 bedrooms and another bathroom. Everything looked neat and clean. Light-colored walls, laminate floors, plastic windows. Independent heating. Gas boiler installed 2 years ago. Well water, septic system. And checked corners, outlets, even peeked between baseboards. No dampness, no mold, no cracks. The house was genuinely in great shape. Why are you selling? She asked. Boris sighed. My daughter lives in Seattle. Keeps telling me I shouldn't stay here alone. My wife passed 3 years ago. I'm not young anymore. Time to move closer to family. And why is the price lower than market? I just want a quick sale. My daughter already found an apartment for me. We're moving in June. I don't have the time or energy to haggle. And nodded. The explanation made sense. The man did look tired of living alone. She walked around the yard, well-kept lawn, a few apple trees, a parking spot with a carport. A perfect deal for the price. Can I see the house documents? Boris pulled out a folder and skimmed through the property deed, technical passport, registry extract. Everything was in his name, no liens or encumbrances. The house built in 2018, the land owned since 2016. I need a couple of days to think. May I call you back? Of course. Just so you know, 2 others looked at it this week. If someone pays a deposit first, I can't hold it. And understood the rules. A good house at that price wouldn't stay on the market long. But she wasn't about to rush into anything. On her way home, she ran through the math again. $560,000 for the house, maybe $25,000 more for minor repairs and furniture. Still within her savings, with a small cushion left. Definitely doable. That evening, Roger came home from another haul, tall, broad-shouldered, balding on top. 42 years old, 15 of them spent behind the wheel of a truck. He looked tired but content, meaning the trip went smoothly, and waited until he'd showered and eaten before telling him about the house in Riverside. $560,000 for that place is a steal. I saw it today, everything's in great shape. Roger looked up from his plate. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, worry, and couldn't tell. Where exactly is this house? In Riverside, Maple Street, number 23. He frowned. That's kind of far from the city. 37 minutes by car. That's fine for a country home. Why do we even need a country home? We already have an apartment. And was taken aback by his reaction. For the last 3 years, Roger had kept saying how nice it would be to have a place out of town, fishing, a sauna, a little garden. And now that it was actually possible, he'd changed his mind. You're the one who wanted a country house. I did, but not one that expensive. You'd blow all your savings at once. My savings are my concern. Roger set his plate aside. Look, let's not rush. Let's check other options, compare. Maybe we'll find something better and cheaper. Boris wants to sell fast. If I don't put down a deposit in the next few days, someone else will buy it. Then let them. Maybe it's not meant to be. And steadied him. His tone was too firm for someone who usually stayed out of her financial decisions. In 11 years of marriage, Roger had never interfered. She'd chosen the car, the furniture, even planned their vacations alone. And now suddenly, he was this involved. All right, I'll think about it, she said. The conversation was over, but the unease remained. The next morning, and drove back to Riverside. She wanted to double-check the house, make sure she hadn't missed anything. Boris welcomed her warmly and told her to take as much time as she needed. She methodically inspected everything, faucets, drains, light switches. Checked the basement, dry, no signs of flooding. Went up to the attic, insulation good, beams solid. The house truly had no flaws. As she stepped out of the upstairs bedroom, she happened to glance out the window, and froze. Down below, she saw a familiar car. A dark Ford Escort, exactly like Roger's. She leaned closer to the glass. Yes, the same license plate. What was he doing here? And hurried downstairs. Boris was sitting in the kitchen with a cup of tea. Did you see who came in that gray Ford just now? The old man thought for a moment. Oh, yes. A week ago a man came by, asked about the price and paperwork. Said he'd think about it and call back, but he never did. Can you describe him? Tall, broad, around 40, wearing a camouflage jacket. That matched Roger perfectly. So he'd seen this house a week ago, before, and had even found the listing. And he hadn't told her. Why? She thanked Boris and stepped outside. Sitting in her car, she pulled out her phone and opened Roger's messages. Scrolled back 10 days. March 18th, he'd texted saying he was delayed on a haul and would be home late. But if he'd been here on the 18th, that haul never happened. A lie. And called the dispatcher at Roger's trucking company. Hey, Linda, can you check something for me? Was Roger out on a haul on March 18th? Hold on checking. No, he had the day off on the 18th. Left for Chicago on the 19th. Got it, thanks. So her husband had deliberately gone to see the house, lied about being on the road, and was now trying to talk her out of buying it. Something didn't add up. And called her friend and attorney, Jason. They had worked together on several projects, and she trusted his professionalism. Jason, I need a favor. I want to check if a property deal is clean. I can send you the address. Of course. Send it over. I'll check the documents, any liens, or outstanding debts. One more thing. Can you find out if anyone else recently ran a search on that property through the registry? That's trickier, but I'll try. And sent him the address and the property registry extract. Jason promised to finish by the end of the day. That evening, he replied with a long message. The house was legally clean, no unpaid utilities, no encumbrances, one owner, Boris Kromov. But there was an interesting detail. 2 weeks earlier, someone had checked the same property through the public real estate database. Jason even included the IP address of the search, and copied it and ran it through an IP lookup. The result made her freeze. The request had come from a computer at the trucking company where Roger worked. There was a shared terminal at the truck lot for drivers, and someone from there had searched the records for the Riverside property. Roger hadn't just seen the house, he'd been checking its legal history, planning to buy it. But why keep that from her? And went to bed with heavy thoughts. In the morning, Roger left for another haul, this time for real. She confirmed with Linda, route to Denver, 3 days. On Monday, and was sorting invoices at work when someone knocked on her office door. The secretary let in a woman in her late 50s wearing a worn jacket and a knitted hat. Dorothy, her mother-in-law. And, hope I'm not disturbing you. Hello. Is something wrong? Dorothy came in and sat down across from her, an unnatural smile on her face. Oh, nothing. I was just passing by and thought I'd stop in. Haven't seen you in a while. And knew Dorothy worked as a school concierge on the opposite side of town. There was no way she had just been passing by. To what do I owe the visit? Roger told me you've been looking at a house outside the city. And stiffened. So Roger had told his mother. Why? Yes, I've been considering a few options. How nice. I've always dreamed of living in the country. Fresh air, peace, and quiet. You can plant a garden, grow flowers. At my age, it's time to think about health, not choke on city dust. Dorothy spoke as if she were the one planning to move there. But you have an apartment downtown. That's convenient. Convenient, sure, but old. The radiators leak, the windows are drafty. Repairs cost a fortune, and I don't have the energy anymore. I've been thinking maybe it's time to slow down. Being a concierge is hard on the legs, my blood pressure's all over the place. At 59, I'm not exactly young. And listened, realizing where this was going. Dorothy was hinting at something. Dorothy, if you need help with repairs, Roger and I can talk about it. Oh, it's not about repairs. Though it's nice to know you're willing to help. The older woman paused, clearly waiting for and to say something else, but stayed silent. She wasn't going to play along with these hints. Dorothy understood she wouldn't get a promise and switched topics. Well, I won't keep you from work then. Just wanted to say hello. Goodbye. She left, but the unpleasant aftertaste lingered. What was that about? A probe? A test? To see how Anne would react to the hints? That evening, Anne called Roger. Your mother came to my office today. She did? Why? She was talking about the country house, how she dreams of living in fresh air. Did you tell her something? Well, I mentioned you were looking at houses. What's the big deal? Why are you discussing my plans with your mother? She's family. Why can't I tell her? Because it's my purchase, my money, my decision. Roger went silent for a moment, then said with hurt in his voice. I see. So I'm just an outsider to you now. Don't twist my words. I just don't see why your mother needs to know details that don't concern her. All right, sorry. I won't bring it up again. The conversation ended stiffly, and went back to browsing listings, but her mind kept circling back to her husband's and mother-in-law's strange behavior. Something was off. Her gut told her there was a catch. On Wednesday, Anne called Boris again. How's the sale going? No one's paid a deposit yet, but I'm getting constant calls and showings. I'm ready to buy. When can we meet to finalize? Anytime. How about Thursday, around 11? Deal. And hung up and felt a wave of relief. The decision was made. The house would be hers. Thursday morning, she woke earlier than usual and went to check the mailbox. Inside was a folded sheet of notebook paper. She opened it. A regular ruled page, scrawled in shaky blue pen handwriting. Don't buy this house. You're being deceived. Check your husband. And read the note twice. Anonymous. Someone was either trying to scare her or warn her. She went back inside, poured herself coffee, and sat to think. Her husband was clearly hiding something. Her mother-in-law's sudden interest wasn't normal. And now this anonymous message. Coincidence? Or someone deliberately trying to stop the deal? And grabbed her phone and called Jason. Jason, can you recheck the Riverside house? I mean everything, previous owners, transactions, the works. Something happened? I think someone's trying to interfere. I want to make sure everything's really clean. All right, give me a couple of hours. 2 hours later, Jason sent a detailed report. The house was built in 2018 by Boris Krumov himself on his own land. No previous owners. The plot had been registered in 2016, inherited from his late wife, Antonia. No debts, no encumbrances, no court disputes. Legally spotless. And exhaled in relief. So, the property wasn't the problem lay elsewhere. At exactly 11, she arrived at Boris's house. The old man was already waiting with the paperwork ready. They sat at the table, and carefully read the sales contract. Everything standard, parties, property, price, terms. She signed without hesitation. I'll pay the deposit now. $50,000. The rest after registration. Excellent. I'll submit the documents tomorrow. The registration should take about 10 days. Boris counted the bills and wrote her a receipt, and neatly placed all the papers into her folder. Whose name shall we register under? Mine. And Pollock. Your husband won't mind? This is my personal purchase. He has nothing to do with it. The old man nodded. He didn't care about family matters. As Anne stepped out of the house, she felt a quiet satisfaction. The first step was done. Now she just had to wait for the paperwork and get the keys. That evening, she told Roger about the deposit. Why were you in such a rush? We hadn't even discussed it properly. There's nothing to discuss. It's my money, my decision. And we're a family. Decisions like this should be made together. Roger, you're a truck driver making $5,000 a month. I make 3 times that. I'm buying this house with my own savings. Why should I need your permission? Roger's face turned red. So that's what I am to you? Nobody? You're my husband. But that doesn't mean I have to report every purchase to you. A house isn't a purchase, it's property. A serious investment. Exactly why I'm handling it myself. Roger wanted to keep arguing, but Anne got up and went to the bedroom. The discussion was over. The next few days passed in tense silence. Her husband barely spoke, answering only when necessary, and didn't care. She focused on work and waited for Boris's call. It came 11 days later. And the registration's complete. You can come pick up the documents and keys. Perfect. I'll be there this evening. She left work early and drove to Riverside. Boris handed her the ownership certificate, the technical passport, and a ring of keys. Congratulations on your new home. It's a good one, it'll serve you well. Thank you for being straightforward. The old man smiled. At my age, honesty's worth more than money. And shook his hand and stepped outside. She walked around the yard, taking in every corner. This was her house now, her space, her decision. She unlocked the front door and went inside. The empty rooms echoed with her footsteps. The air smelled of fresh paint and wood. She went upstairs, stood by the bedroom window, and looked out. Quiet. Peaceful. None of the city noise. Her phone buzzed. A message from Roger. Where are you? And typed back. At the new house. Just got the papers. The reply came instantly. Congratulations. 2 words. Dry, emotionless. As if she just bought a new pair of shoes, not a house worth $560,000. And went downstairs and walked through each room again. In her mind, she was already arranging furniture, deciding where to hang paintings, where to put the TV. The future layout was forming clearly in her head. As she stepped outside, she noticed a woman around 60 standing by the neighboring fence, wearing a gardening apron. The woman waved. Hello, are you the new owner? Yes, I'm Anne. I'm Martha, I live right next door. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask. Thank you, I appreciate that. Martha smiled and disappeared through her gate. A pleasant woman. It was nice to have normal neighbors. And got into her car and drove back to the city. On the way, she couldn't stop thinking about how strange everything was, her husband's resistance, her mother-in-law's suspicious interest, the anonymous note. None of it made sense. At home, Roger was on the couch watching the news, and walked past him without a word. She spread the documents out on the table and read through the contract again. Everything was in order. Owner, Anne Pollock. No co-owners, no encumbrances. Roger came up behind her, peering over her shoulder. So, it's only in your name? Yes. What about me? What about you? Did you invest any money in it? Roger clenched his fists. We've been married 12 years. Everything should be shared. Roger, the house was bought with my personal savings. By law, it's my property. What law? Family law. Anything bought with funds saved before marriage or received as a gift isn't considered joint property. His face went pale. You talked to a lawyer? Did you really think I'd buy a house without checking the legal details first? Roger turned and stormed out of the room. The door slammed, and stayed seated at the table. The tension was growing, but she wasn't going to back down. The house was hers. Period. That night she couldn't sleep, turning things over in her mind. In the morning, she got up early, packed her bag, and went to work. The day went by in routine tasks, contracts, supplier negotiations, budget reviews. Work helped her push the heaviness aside. That evening, as she left the office and caught sight of a familiar figure near the parking lot, Dorothy was standing by her car, smoking. When she saw her daughter-in-law, she stubbed out the cigarette and walked over. And, can I have a word? Hello. What's going on? Roger told me you bought the house. Congratulations. Dorothy hesitated, clearly searching for the right words. You know, I've been thinking. It's such a big house, plenty of room. Maybe I could move in with you. I could help with the chores, plant a garden, cook. It gets so lonely living by myself in the city. And looked at her coldly. Dorothy, this is my house. Who lives there is up to me. Well, I'm not a stranger. I'm Roger's mother, after all. Exactly why I'm being direct. Moving in is out of the question. Dorothy's face twisted in anger. Oh, so that's how it is? I'm nothing to you now? You're not nothing. We just live separately. And what if Roger wants me to move in? Roger isn't the owner. His opinion matters, but the decision is mine. Dorothy's face flushed with rage. Got a little money and now you think you can do whatever you want? And opened her car door. Goodbye, Dorothy. She got behind the wheel and drove off without looking back. In the rearview mirror, she saw her mother-in-law waving her arms, shouting something. It didn't matter. The boundaries were clear now. At home, Roger greeted her with a dark expression. Mom called. Said you were rude to her. I just answered her question. She only wanted to help with the house. Roger, your mother is not living in my house. Not now, not ever. Why are you being so cruel? It's not cruelty, it's common sense. I'm not living under the same roof as my mother-in-law. And what if I want to? And turned to him. Then go live with her in the apartment. The house stays with me. Roger fell silent. He knew pushing further was pointless. The next few days passed in cold silence. They barely spoke, each busy with their own things, and drove to Riverside after work to plan renovations. Roger spent more and more time on the road. One evening, as Ann sat in the new house making a list of repair supplies, her phone rang. An unfamiliar number. Good evening. This is Martha, your neighbor. Hi, Martha. Is something wrong? Well, I just wanted to let you know. Earlier today I saw a woman near your house. Middle-aged, kind of heavy-set, wearing a brown jacket. She was walking around your fence, peeking into the windows. And tensed up. Can you describe her in more detail? Well, around 55 or 60. Dyed reddish hair, round face. Looks like an ordinary woman. The description matched Dorothy. Thank you for letting me know. That's probably my mother-in-law. Oh, all right then. I just thought maybe it was a stranger snooping around. No, it's fine. Thanks for calling. And hung up. Dorothy had come and inspected the house. Why? What was she looking for? And decided to install security cameras. The next day, she ordered 2 motion sensor cameras online with live feed access on her phone. 3 days later, the package arrived. She installed one camera in the hallway, the other in the backyard. Connected them to Wi-Fi, everything worked perfectly. Now she could sleep peacefully. If anyone tried to get in, she'd know instantly. Life returned to normal, work, home, the occasional short talk with her husband. Roger was home less and less, claiming he had constant long-haul trips. That suited him just fine. Fewer arguments. One morning, while at the office, she got a notification from the camera app. Motion detected in the hallway, and opened the live feed, and froze. On the screen, Roger was clearly visible. He unlocked the door with his own key, walked in, looking around carefully. Dorothy followed right behind him, and turned on the sound. It was faint, but some phrases were still clear. See, Mom? Great house, right? Sure, nice one. Except she's the owner now. For now, yeah, but we'll see about that. What do you mean, we'll see? I told you, I have a plan. What plan, Roger? I'll explain later. For now, keep quiet and don't draw attention. They walked into the kitchen, and the sound cut off, and saved the recording and closed the app. Her hands were shaking with rage. So her husband did have a plan. A plan to get the house. A plan she wasn't supposed to know about. She grabbed her phone and called a locksmith. I need to change the locks in my house. Can you come today? I can be there around 5. Perfect. I'll be waiting. At 5, and met the locksmith at the house. He quickly replaced the locks on both the front and back doors. She kept the old keys. Roger would not be getting the new ones. She got home late. Roger was already asleep. In the morning, he left for another haul, and said nothing about the locks, let him find out on his own. 2 days later, Roger called, furious. What the hell did you do to the locks? I changed them. Why? My house, my locks. And I'm your husband. So what? That doesn't give you the right to bring your mother there without my permission. How do you even know about that? I've got cameras installed. I saw and heard everything. Roger fell silent. He knew he was caught. Listen, it's not what you think. Oh, really? Then what am I thinking? Mom just wanted to see the house. I let her in for a couple of minutes. Roger, you mentioned having a plan. What plan? What plan? You must have misheard something. I heard the recording. Don't lie. He went quiet again, then muttered, "We'll talk when I get back," and hung up, and put the phone down. The tension was growing, but she wasn't backing off. The house was protected, locks changed, cameras running. No one would step inside without her knowing. All that was left was to figure out exactly what plan her husband was hatching, and to make sure she stayed ahead of him. The next morning started with a jolt, and hadn't even fully woken up when her phone buzzed, another alert from the camera app. Motion detected in the hallway. She grabbed her phone and opened the feed. Dorothy was clearly visible, standing in the middle of the hallway with a set of keys in her hand, glancing around. She was wearing an old tracksuit and slippers, a measuring tape sticking out of her bag. The woman walked into the living room, pulled out the tape, and began measuring the wall. Then she took out her phone and snapped a picture of the window. She moved on to the kitchen, more measuring, more photos, and hit record and kept watching. Dorothy went upstairs, entering each bedroom, repeating the same routine: tape measure, notes, photos. She was even writing things down in a notebook, acting like a homeowner planning renovations. After about 20 minutes, Dorothy came back downstairs, walked through the first floor again, then finally left, locking the door behind her and disappearing through the gate, and saved the entire recording and lay back down. Her heart was pounding. So Dorothy had keys. Roger must have given them to her before and changed the locks. But how did he even have a full set? She'd only given him one front door key, yet Dorothy had opened the door easily, as if she had all of them. The answer came quickly. Roger had made duplicates, probably right after, and got the keys from Boris. While she was at work, he had copies made. And got up, got dressed, and drove to a hardware store. She bought new high-security locks, ones that couldn't be picked with a regular tool. Then she headed to Riverside and replaced every lock herself. It took 3 hours, but now no one could break in without her knowledge. She threw away the old locks. The new keys she hid in a safe at her office. Roger didn't get any. Let him think the keys were at home. When he tried to enter, he'd find the locks changed again. That evening, and returned to the country house under the pretense of measuring for furniture. She brought a tape measure, notebook, and pen, walking through the rooms with an air of focus. In reality, she was searching every corner for clues. In the kitchen, she checked the trash can, empty. Strange. Usually after someone visits, there's at least something left behind. She opened the cabinet under the sink. Inside was a crumpled plastic bag, and unfolded it and found a receipt from a hardware store. The name read Dorothy Henderson. Date, that very day. Total, $2,800. The list of purchases included 3 kinds of wallpaper, wall paint, primer, brushes, and rollers. Dorothy had already bought renovation supplies, and not just browsing, but spending real money. That meant she was absolutely certain the house would soon be hers. So certain she was investing in it already. And took a photo of the receipt and put it back in the bag. Dorothy couldn't suspect surveillance. Let her think everything was going according to plan. And finished her fake measurements and drove home, thinking through every angle. Roger and his mother were clearly plotting something. They acted as if the house already belonged to them. But legally, the property was in Anne's name. How did they plan to take it from her? There were a few options. First, divorce and property division. But the house was bought with Anne's personal funds, not marital assets. By law, it was hers alone. Second, document forgery. But that was a crime, and Roger wasn't bold enough for that. Third, pressure, manipulation, trying to force her to transfer ownership. And leaned toward the third. Dorothy would play the frail, sick old woman, tugging at sympathy. Roger would insist his mother needed care. They'd try to wear her down with guilt and constant arguments. But Anne wasn't someone who broke easily. She'd always defended her interests firmly. If necessary, she'd go to court. If necessary, she'd get a divorce. The main thing was not to let them manipulate her. The next day, she stopped by an auto shop and told the mechanic her husband had lost his phone and needed a voice recorder installed in the truck to record client calls. The mechanic didn't ask questions. For $200, he installed a small recording device under the dashboard. It turned on automatically with the ignition and recorded everything inside the cab. And knew this was technically legal. Spouses could install recording devices in shared vehicles without each other's consent, as long as the recording wasn't used for blackmail or spreading personal data. It was purely for protection. Roger came home from his haul late that night, and greeted him as usual, no questions, no accusations. He ate dinner and went to bed. The next morning, he left for the truck yard. and waited until he turned the corner, then opened the recorder app on her phone. The recording had started exactly at 8 a.m. when Roger started the engine. The first 10 minutes were just the hum of the road and the radio. Then a phone rang. Roger answered on speaker. "Hey, Mom." Dorothy's voice sounded tense. "Roger, I did everything you told me. I checked the house, wrote down the measurements, bought the wallpaper. When are we moving in?" "Relax, Mom. Everything's going according to plan." "What plan, Roger?" "She changed the locks. My keys don't fit." "Don't worry. I've got a spare set. She just doesn't know yet." "What if she finds out?" "She won't. Just keep quiet and stay out of sight. Soon it'll all be ours." "Well, I already told the neighbors we're moving in. I even promised the grandkids they'd visit me this summer at my new house. But that which keeps ruining everything. You should have had the house registered under both our names from the start." "Mom, stop worrying. I've got this handled. Just give me a little time." "How much longer? I'm sick of that job. Being a concierge at 60 is humiliating. I want to retire already." "Soon, Mom. Just a bit longer." The call ended, and stopped the recording and saved the file. Now everything made sense. Dorothy wasn't just dreaming about the house, she had already told the neighbors she was moving in. She'd even promised the grandkids. Wait, grandkids? Did Roger have other children in the family? Or was she lying? And opened Dorothy's social media page and scrolled through her photos. Sure enough, there were pictures of her holding small children. The captions read, "With my granddaughter Ashley, grandson Ethan visiting." So Roger had a sibling with kids, and had never heard about them. He'd never mentioned any family. She dialed Roger's number. He didn't answer right away. "Yeah? Do you have any brothers or sisters?" A pause. "Why do you want to know? 12 years of marriage, and you've never mentioned it." "I have a sister. She lives in another city. We don't talk." "Why not?" "We had a fight a long time ago." "It's none of your business." Roger hung up, and sat there thinking, if he had a sister, why keep it secret? What were they fighting about? She called Jason. "Jason, I need another favor. Can you run a background check? Dorothy Henderson, 59 years old. I need everything, relatives, job, property. Give me a couple of days." 2 days later, Jason sent a report. Dorothy Henderson, 59, worked as a concierge at Franklin School. Never married. 2 children, Roger Henderson, 42, and Pamela Henderson, 38. Pamela was married, had 2 kids, lived in Sacramento. Property, a 2-bedroom apartment downtown, owned outright by Dorothy. No utility debts, no loans. And studied the information carefully. So Dorothy already had an apartment of her own. Why did she need the house in Riverside, then? Pure greed, or just the desire to live better at someone else's expense? She kept reading. Under the financial transactions section, it said, 3 months ago, Dorothy received a bank transfer from Roger Henderson for $18,000. The payment note read, medical assistance. And remembered, 3 months ago, Roger had said his mother needed urgent knee surgery. He'd asked for money, and gave him the $18,000 without hesitation, believing Dorothy was really sick. She opened her banking app and checked their joint account history. Sure enough, on December 21st, there was a transfer for $18,000. Roger had said it was for surgery. But if Dorothy just spent $2,800 on wallpaper and paint, her health clearly wasn't the issue. And called the clinic where her mother-in-law was registered, introducing herself as a social worker checking medical records. "Dorothy Henderson?" The receptionist repeated. "She's in our records as practically healthy. Last visit was 6 months ago, routine checkup. No complaints, no chronic illnesses. Any surgeries?" "No, none." "Why are you asking?" "Just verifying some information for a report." "Thank you." And hung up and leaned back in her chair. So there had been no surgery. Roger had lied to get money, then handed it over to his mother. But why? What had Dorothy spent the $18,000 on? The answer was obvious, preparing for her move. Furniture, repairs, appliances. Dorothy was getting ready to settle into Anne's house for good. Rage boiled inside her. They had deceived her, stolen money under a fake excuse, and now were using it to take over her property. But anger wasn't enough. She needed proof, facts, a plan, and made a list of actions. 1. Gather all evidence of the fraud. 2. Record any attempts by Dorothy to enter the house. 3. Prepare a legal defense strategy. 4. Be ready for divorce if Roger didn't back down. The next day, and was reviewing another contract at work when her secretary peeked into the office. "And there's a visitor here to see you. She says it's personal." "Who is it?" She said her name's Martha, and tensed. "Her neighbor from Riverside." "What did she want?" "Send her in." A woman in her 50s walked in, wearing a modest coat and a knitted hat. Her face looked tired, but her eyes were kind. Martha greeted her softly and sat down on the edge of the chair. "Sorry to bother you at work. I didn't know how else to reach you. I found your company's address online." "What's wrong?" Martha hesitated, searching for the right words. "Well, I've been thinking and I decided I should tell you. I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing, but staying silent didn't feel right either." "Please, just say it." Martha sighed. "Your mother-in-law came to see me yesterday. Introduced herself, said she'll soon be my new neighbor. Told me you'd given her the house for her birthday. She's been telling everyone in town that you gifted it to her. I thought maybe it was some misunderstanding, so I wanted to warn you." And felt cold run through her. What exactly did she say? Well, that her children gave her a country house as a gift. That she's moving in soon, planning to grow vegetables, host her grandkids. She even showed me pictures of the inside. "What pictures?" "On her phone. She said she's already planning the renovation, picked out wallpaper, choosing wall colors." And clenched her fists under the desk. "Martha, there was no gift. I bought that house myself. My mother-in-law is not moving in." Martha nodded. "I figured as much. She was too eager, you know? When people lie, they always give too many details. I thought you should know." "Thank you. You really helped me." Martha stood. "If you ever need anything, don't hesitate. I live in house 25, right next to yours." She left, and was alone with her thoughts. So Dorothy wasn't just planning to move, she was already telling everyone the house was hers, building a fake narrative so later, if it came to court, there'd be witnesses saying everyone knew the house had been gifted to her. And opened her laptop and began researching real estate court cases. She read for hours, taking notes, consulting with Jason. Gradually, a clear picture began to form. If Dorothy tried to challenge the property ownership, she'd need evidence, documents, witnesses, financial records. But Dorothy had none of that. The purchase agreement was in Anne's name, the payment had come from her personal account, and there were no witnesses except the seller, who could confirm the buyer's identity. The only way to take the house would be to prove it had been bought with joint marital funds. In that case, a divorce could trigger division of assets. But it had solid proof the money was saved before marriage and included her personal bonus. She calmed down. Legally, she was safe, but that didn't protect her from emotional pressure. Dorothy would call, visit, beg. Roger would start fights. She had to be ready to withstand the siege. A week later, and ran into an acquaintance who worked at the same school where Dorothy was a concierge. They bumped into each other at a cafe during lunch break. "Carol, hey, it's been forever." "Anne, how have you been?" They sat down, ordered coffee, chatted about work, family, future plans. Casually, and dropped a line. "By the way, my mother-in-law works at your school, Dorothy Henderson. Have you heard how she's doing?" Carol thought for a moment. "Henderson? Oh, the concierge. Yeah, I think she's planning to quit." "Really?" "Uh-huh. The vice principal said she filed a resignation letter. 2 weeks left till her last day. Said she's tired and ready for retirement." And felt her stomach tighten. "Did she say why?" "Age, health, and she's been bragging that her kids bought her a house. She's moving out to the country." "I see." Carol gave her a curious look. "Something wrong?" No. I just didn't know she was quitting." The conversation drifted to other topics, but Anne wasn't listening anymore. One thought was spinning in her head: Dorothy had submitted her resignation. That meant she was absolutely convinced the house would be hers, so convinced she was ready to quit her job and change her life completely. That could only mean one thing: Roger and Dorothy had a concrete plan. A plan they believed would work. And soon, they'd try to set it in motion. And went back to the office and called Jason. "Jason, I need a consultation. Urgently. Come by." "I'm on my way." She sat in his office and laid everything out: the videos, the audio recordings, the receipt for the wallpaper, the bank statement. Jason reviewed each document carefully. "The situation's unpleasant," he said finally, "but legally you're completely protected. The house is yours, properly registered, paid with your own money. Even if this goes to court, you'll win." "What if they try to forge documents?" "Forgery's a criminal offense. I doubt your husband would risk that. More likely, they'll pressure you, beg, guilt trip, maybe threaten divorce." I'm not afraid of divorce. Then it's simple. Stand your ground, don't fall for manipulation, and keep every bit of evidence you've got. If this ever reaches court, you'll have an airtight case. And nodded. Thank you. As she left the office, she felt a strange calm. Yes, there would be a conflict. Yes, it would get ugly. But she was ready. She had proof, legal backing, and a clear understanding of her rights. Roger and his mother had made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated her. They thought and would be too scared of confrontation to fight back. They were wrong. She got into her car and drove to Riverside. She needed to check the house and make sure everything was fine. On the way, she reviewed her next steps in her mind. When she arrived, something immediately felt off. Parked near the neighbor's fence was Dorothy's old red Toyota Camry. So she was here. And parked farther down the street and opened the camera app on her phone, scrolling through the last 2 hours of footage. Dorothy had indeed come by, but hadn't gone inside. She'd stood by the fence, talking to a group of people, then they all left. And got out of the car and walked toward her house. Near the gate, Martha called out to her. And, got a minute? Of course. The neighbor stepped closer and lowered her voice. Your mother-in-law brought a crew of workers here today. She was showing them the house, talking about renovations. I overheard her saying the wallpaper needed replacing in every room. And felt a wave of fury rise inside her. Thanks for telling me. She also told the workers her kids were moving abroad and had given her the house as a gift. She wanted them to start next week. I see. Martha gave her a sympathetic look. If you need any help, let me know. Everyone around here knows each other. We'll back you up if anything happens. And thanked her and went inside. She unlocked the door with her new keys and stepped into the house. Everything was in place. Dorothy hadn't been able to get in since the locks were changed. And walked through each room, checking for signs, marks, notes, anything the workers might have left. Nothing suspicious. Apparently, Dorothy had only shown the place from the outside, peeking through windows. And sat on the windowsill, looking out. The quiet little town, the tidy houses, peaceful neighbors. This was what she dreamed of: silence, fresh air, her own space. And no one was going to take that dream away from her. Her phone buzzed. A message from Roger. We can't go on like this. Agreed. That's why I suggest we settle this once and for all. How exactly? Your mother stops trying to take my house. You stop lying and manipulating. Or it's divorce. Several minutes passed in silence. Then came his reply. We'll talk at home. And turned off her phone and went back to checking the house. She needed to tighten security, more cameras, an alarm system, so no one could break in even when she wasn't there. The next day she ordered a professional security installation. A crew arrived, and in 6 hours they'd fitted motion sensors on every window and door, all linked to a monitoring center. Any break-in attempt would trigger an immediate patrol response. And paid the installers and went home. Roger was sitting on the couch with a grim look on his face. We need to talk. I'm listening. He got up and paced the room. My mother worked her whole life. 3 jobs at once just to raise me and my sister. She deserves a decent retirement. I agree. Then why won't you help her? Roger, I am helping. I'm just not giving away my house. She's got nowhere else to go. Your mother owns a 2-bedroom apartment downtown. A perfectly good place to live. It needs repairs. Then fix it. With what money? And looked at him coldly. With the $18,000 you stole from me under the lie of her surgery. Roger went pale. How do you know? I checked. Your mother's perfectly healthy. There was no surgery. You lied to get the money. Roger sank onto the couch. I just wanted to help her. Helping is fine. Lying and stealing aren't. And she's my mother. Try to understand, I can't just abandon her. No one's asking you to. Help her all you want, but my house stays mine. Roger looked at her with despair. You're so cruel. I'm realistic, and I won't let anyone manipulate me. He stood up and stormed out, slamming the door, and sat in silence. The conversation had gone nowhere. Roger wasn't giving up his intentions. The conflict would continue. The next few days passed in tense anticipation, and went to work, checked the security cameras, kept gathering evidence. Roger was rarely home, always claiming to be out on the road. One evening, while and was sorting paperwork, she got a call from an unfamiliar woman. Hello, this is Pamela, Roger's sister. And stiffened. I'm listening. I need to meet with you, to talk about the situation with the house. I don't see why that's necessary. Please. It's important. I came all the way from Sacramento. And hesitated. Interesting. What could Roger's sister want? Was she taking their mother's side, or did she have her own agenda? All right, tomorrow, 2 o'clock, the cafe on Main Street. Deal. The next day and arrived 10 minutes early, took a table by the window, and ordered coffee. Exactly at 2, a slim woman around 38 with short hair walked in. Anne? I'm Pamela. They shook hands. Pamela sat down and ordered tea. Thanks for agreeing to meet. Why did you come? Pamela sighed. To warn you, my mother is a dangerous person. She's manipulative, deceitful, and always finds a way to twist things. I haven't spoken to her in 5 years, and was taken aback by the bluntness. Why not? She tried to take my apartment after my divorce, claimed I was an unfit mother, said I couldn't handle my kids, tried to take custody of her grandchildren and kick me out of my own place. I barely got through it in court. Seriously? Absolutely. My mother believes everyone owes her, especially her children. Roger's always been her favorite, so she's got him completely under her control. Pamela reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. Here, copies of the court rulings from my case. Here's the correspondence where she threatened to have me stripped of parental rights. And here are witness statements from neighbors who confirmed her unstable behavior. And flipped through the papers. It was all there, a property dispute case. Dorothy had filed a lawsuit claiming Pamela's apartment was joint family property. The court had dismissed it for lack of evidence. Why are you showing me this? Because I know she'll try to pull the same thing with you. She's already started, from what Roger told me. I just want you to be ready. I am ready. Pamela nodded. One more thing. My mother filed her resignation notice. That means she's certain she'll be moving into your house soon. She's got a plan. I don't know what it is, but she has one. I understand. Be careful. She might plant fake documents, spread lies, turn people against you. She's done all that before. And listen carefully. The information was invaluable. Now she understood exactly who she was dealing with. Dorothy wasn't just an intrusive mother-in-law, she was a calculating manipulator with experience in legal battles. Thank you for the warning. No problem. Roger's my brother, and I love him, but he's weak. She controls him like a puppet. If you want to save your marriage, you'll have to draw hard boundaries. And if I don't want to save it, then divorce him fast. The longer you wait, the harder it'll be to untangle yourself. They finished their drinks and said goodbye, and went home deep in thought. The picture was now complete. Dorothy was a dangerous opponent. Roger was a weak-willed accomplice, and was the only one who could protect her own interests. That evening, she sat at her computer and drafted an action plan. 1. Strengthen the paper trail, gather all receipts, statements, and contracts proving the house was bought with her personal funds. 2. Document every attempt by Dorothy to enter the house or spread lies. 3. Consult a lawyer about filing a countersuit for defamation and extortion. 4. Prepare divorce papers in case Roger didn't come to his senses. The plan was ready. Now it was time to act. The next day Anne took a day off and went to a notary. She granted Jason legal power of attorney in case anything happened to her. She also wrote a will, stating that in the event of her death, the house would go to her parents. Roger and Dorothy weren't mentioned anywhere in the document. The notary processed everything and stamped the papers, and took the documents and placed them in her bank safe deposit box. Now, even in a worst-case scenario, Dorothy would never get the house. Driving home, Anne felt an odd sense of relief. Every measure was in place, every loophole closed. Now she could wait and see what came next. Roger came back from another haul 3 days later, looking tired and irritable, and greeted him silently. He ate dinner and went straight to bed. The next morning, as he was getting ready for work, he said suddenly, "Mom wants to meet with you." "For what?" "To talk. Just a normal, civil conversation. We have nothing to talk about." And give her a chance to explain. "There's nothing to explain. Everything's clear." Roger clenched his fists. "You're stubborn. I'm consistent. That's the same thing." "No. Stubbornness is clinging to something stupid. Consistency is defending your interests." He turned and stormed out, slamming the door, and finished her coffee and headed to work. The day passed quietly at the office, routine tasks, meetings, paperwork. Toward evening, Jason called. "And I've got an update. Your mother-in-law went to the Riverside Municipal Office today. She tried to register herself as a temporary resident at your address." "What?" "They turned her away, of course. Told her it's only possible with the owner's consent. But the fact itself says a lot. She's actively moving forward." "Got it. Thanks for the heads up." And hung up, thinking, Dorothy was trying to register at the house. That meant the plan was entering its active phase. Something decisive was coming soon. She decided to act preemptively. That evening, she wrote an official letter to the Riverside Municipal Office, confirming she was the sole owner of the property. She explicitly prohibited any registration of new residents at that address without her written consent. She attached copies of ownership documents and sent the letter by registered mail with a receipt. From now on, any of Dorothy's attempts would be automatically rejected, and could feel she was on the brink of a serious confrontation. But she was ready. She had the evidence, the legal backing, the strategy, and most importantly, the unshakable resolve to protect what was rightfully hers. And woke up with a clear plan of action. Today, she would move into her country house, once and for all. No more half measures, no more double life split between the city apartment and Riverside. Over breakfast, she casually told Roger she was leaving on a 3-day business trip. A project in Eugene, meetings with suppliers, contract negotiations. He nodded without looking up from his phone. His indifference said it all. There was a time when he'd at least ask about the details of her trips. And packed a suitcase with clothes for the business trip, carefully placing business suits and folders inside. Roger walked her to the door and gave her a mechanical kiss on the cheek. Everything looked normal, nothing to betray her real intentions. After driving away from the house, and pulled over near her office and took out her second phone, she called a moving company and ordered a truck with 2 movers for the afternoon. Then she drove back home, waited until Roger left for work, and began packing her things. Clothes, shoes, personal documents, laptop, tablet, cosmetics, everything that belonged only to her. She left the family photos. The shared kitchenware too. She was taking only what she had bought herself or received as gifts before the marriage. The movers arrived right at 2 p.m. 2 strong men quickly loaded the boxes and suitcases into the truck, and got into her car and drove ahead, leading the way to Riverside. On the road, she kept going over what was coming. Her gut told her that something decisive would happen today. Dorothy had been far too active lately, and Roger had been getting strange calls almost daily. Something was brewing. As she neared the town and slowed down, parked by her house was Dorothy's familiar red Toyota Camry. Next to it, a white van with the words "Remodeling Finishing" painted on the side. So, the mother-in-law was already here. And not alone. And stopped about 100 meters away and got out. The moving truck pulled in behind her. She asked the driver to wait 5 minutes and started walking toward the property. The gate was wide open. In the yard lay rolls of wallpaper, paint buckets, and ladders. The front door stood ajar. From inside came voices and the sound of work. And stepped inside, and froze. The sight exceeded all expectations. The living room was a construction mess. Old wallpaper half torn down, plaster chunks all over the floor. In the corner, a man in overalls stood on a ladder, putting up new wallpaper. Another was painting the ceiling. And right in the middle of the chaos stood Dorothy, wearing a faded work robe, barking orders. No, Jim, not like that. The seams go edge to edge, not overlapped. How many times do I have to tell you? Dorothy turned and saw Anne. Her face twisted with fury. What the hell are you doing here, you idiot? She screamed. Your husband told me this house was bought for me, so get out before I call the police. The workers stopped and stared at the 2 women. The air thickened with tension. And took out her phone. Her voice was cold, calm. Perfect. Go ahead, call them. Dorothy blinked, thrown off by the response. She'd clearly expected panic, excuses, maybe tears, but and stood her ground, staring at her with an icy, unflinching gaze. What are you standing there for? Get out. This is my house, and I'm not going anywhere. And opened the home security app on her phone and turned the screen toward the workers. Gentlemen, look. Here's the camera footage. That's this woman breaking into my house without permission. Here she is measuring the walls. Here, bringing you in and pretending to be the owner. The men exchanged glances. The one called Jim climbed down from the ladder. Who are you, exactly? Ann Pollock, the legal owner of this house. Here are the documents. She pulled a folder from her bag and showed them the deed, the purchase contract, the property registry. The workers inspected them carefully. So, this lady scammed us? Jim said darkly. Seems that way. She has no legal right to this property. She hired you under false pretenses. Dorothy's face turned crimson. She's lying. The house is mine. My kids bought it for me. Do you have any proof of that? Dorothy hesitated. Roger's taking care of the paperwork. They just put it in her name temporarily, but it'll be changed soon. And turned to the workers. Gentlemen, you've been misled. I'll compensate you for your time. How much were you promised? 2.5 grand for 2 days' work. You'll get 3,000 for the trouble. Jim nodded to his partner. They began packing up their tools. Hey, what are you doing? Dorothy shrieked. You're not done. We only work with the actual property owner, ma'am, and you're not it, Jim said curtly. They quickly gathered their things and carried them outside, and followed, paid them in cash, and thanked them for understanding. The men loaded up their van and drove away. It took only a few minutes to clear the debris from her house. She returned to the hallway. Dorothy stood in the middle of the wrecked living room, stunned. All her bravado was gone. Pack your things. You have 5 minutes. What things? I'm not going anywhere. And pulled out her phone and dialed a taxi. I need a car at 23 Maple Street, Riverside. In 10 minutes. You have no right to throw me out. I do. This is my house, and you're here illegally. You've got 5 minutes. Either the taxi or the police. Your choice. Dorothy realized bluffing was useless. She began stuffing her belongings into a bag, purse, phone, wallet, her hands trembling with rage and humiliation. You'll regret this. Roger will never forgive you. We'll see. Dorothy shoved her things into a plastic bag and headed for the door. At the threshold, she turned back. You bitch. Greedy, heartless bitch. And didn't reply. She just watched as her mother-in-law stormed through the gate and climbed into the taxi that had just arrived. The car drove off, carrying Dorothy's shrill outrage with it, and walked back inside and surveyed the mess. The living room looked awful, torn walls, paint splatters, debris everywhere. She'd have to hire real professionals to fix it, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that Dorothy would never dare set foot here again. Outside, and waved to the movers. They pulled up and began unloading boxes. The process took about an hour. They stacked everything neatly in the hallway for her to arrange later, and paid the movers and watched them leave. Finally, she was alone in her house. For the first time in a long while, she felt true peace. But it didn't last. Half an hour later, a familiar Ford Escort screeched to a stop at the gate. Roger jumped out and stormed toward the house, his face flushed with fury, and met him at the doorway, arms crossed. What the hell did you do? He shouted. Mom called me crying. Said you kicked her out. I did. She broke into my house and hired workers to renovate it. This is our house, our family's. Roger stopped short when he noticed the boxes stacked in the hall. You moved in here? That's right. Without me? You thought I'd ask your permission to move into my own property. He glanced around, lost and confused. We just wanted to surprise Mom. It was supposed to be a gift. You're kind, you could have understood that. And cut him off mid-sentence. A gift? With my money? Without my consent? Did you really think that would work? Mom deserves a comfortable retirement. Then she can live in her apartment. Or you can buy her a house, with your own money. I don't have that kind of money. Exactly. And walked to the hallway, opened one of the boxes, and pulled out a suitcase. She handed it to Roger. Here, your things. Take them. He stared at the suitcase, confused. What's this? Your clothes, documents, personal stuff. You're leaving with your mother. Roger went pale. You're kicking me out? Exactly. But we're married. Not for long. And pulled a thick folder from another box and tossed it at his feet. Papers scattered across the floor. Here are the transcripts of all your phone calls with your mother. Here's the recording where you promise her the house. Here's the bank statement showing you withdrew $18,000 for that fake surgery. Here's the clinic report proving your mother's healthy. And here's a screenshot from the security cameras showing her measuring the walls in my house. All of this is going to court. Roger stood frozen, staring at the papers. His face slowly drained of color. You were spying on me? I was protecting my interests. That's illegal. Everything was perfectly legal. Spouses are allowed to install monitoring devices on shared property and vehicles. He crouched down, gathering the papers with trembling hands. It seemed he was only now realizing and knew everything, every lie, every manipulation, every part of the plan. And, please, let's talk calmly. There's nothing to talk about. I can explain. It's too late for explanations. Another car pulled into the driveway. A man in a work uniform stepped out, carrying a toolbox. You called for a locksmith? Yes, come in. Roger looked at her, bewildered. A locksmith? Why? To change the locks. What? And turned to the man. I need all the locks replaced, front and back doors. Use the most secure ones, anti-pick, anti-bump. The locksmith nodded and got to work. Roger stood speechless, watching in disbelief. You can't do this. I can. And I am. But I'm your husband. Soon-to-be ex-husband. And pulled another document from the folder and handed it to him. The divorce petition. Already filed. The first hearings in a month. Roger grabbed the paper and skimmed it, his face turning even paler. You're serious? Absolutely. Because of my mother? Because of the lies, manipulation, and your attempt to steal my property. Roger crushed the petition in his fist. I'll fight this. I'll demand half the house in court. Go ahead. But remember, the house was bought with my personal savings. I can prove it. What personal savings? We're married, everything's shared. And pulled out another stack of papers. Here's proof of the bonus I received personally for the project. Here's a statement from my personal account opened before our marriage. And here's documentation showing the funds transferred from the sale of my grandmother's apartment, which I inherited 5 years ago. Every dollar spent on this house was mine. You have no claim to it. Roger said nothing. He was out of arguments. The locksmith finished and handed Ann a set of new keys. All done. German-made, anti-theft locks. Duplicates can only be made at the factory with the chip code. And paid him and saw him out. Then she turned back to Roger. You have 1 week to collect the rest of your stuff from the city apartment. Come when I'm not home. After April 7th, whatever's left goes in the trash. And, stop. You're destroying our family. You destroyed it the moment you decided to deceive me for your mother's sake. Roger grabbed the suitcase and threw it to the floor. I'm not taking it. I'm not leaving. You're my wife. This is my home. And picked up her phone and dialed. Hello, police? I'm reporting an illegal trespass at 23 Maple Street, Riverside. Yes, the person refuses to leave the property. Please send a unit. Roger lunged forward and snatched the phone from her hand. Are you insane? Calling the police on your own husband? You're not the owner of this house, which means you're here illegally. He stood there, clutching the phone, glaring at her with pure hatred. I hate you. Likewise. Roger hurled the phone onto the couch, grabbed the suitcase, and stormed out. A moment later, the sound of screeching tires echoed as his car sped away. And picked up her phone and canceled the call. She hadn't actually reached the dispatcher, she'd only bluffed, knowing Roger wouldn't check. She locked the door with the new key and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. The worst was over. The next few days were spent getting the house in order, and unpacked, arranged the furniture, cleaned every room. She hired a proper crew to fix the damage from Dorothy's workers. Within a week, the living room was restored, new wallpaper, fresh paint, spotless floors. Roger did come by to collect his belongings, and made sure to be out all day so she wouldn't have to see him. When she got home that evening, everything of his was gone, clothes, shoes, documents, even the old photos. The only thing he left behind was his wedding ring on the kitchen table, and picked it up and dropped it into a jewelry box. Someday she'd sell it, or melt it down into something useful. 2 days later, Jason messaged her. Roger had filed a countersuit, demanding the house be declared marital property and divided equally in the divorce. He also wanted compensation for emotional distress due to humiliation and forcible eviction. And smirked as she read the complaint. Emotional distress. What a creative phrase. She went to Jason's office and handed him a folder full of counter-evidence, proof of her independent funds, bank statements, the seller's testimony, recordings of Roger's conversations with his mother, plus her own countersuit demanding the return of the $18,000 he'd taken under false pretenses. Jason reviewed the materials and nodded with satisfaction. Your case is rock solid. Roger doesn't stand a chance. You're sure? Completely. He's got no proof of shared ownership, and you can show every source of your personal funds. On top of that, you can prove his fraud. When's the hearing? In a month, May 15th. And noted the date. That left her enough time to prepare mentally. But the trouble started sooner than she expected. Dorothy launched a full-on smear campaign to ruin Ann's reputation among their mutual friends and relatives. She called everyone she could think of, spinning a tearful story about how her cruel daughter-in-law had thrown an elderly woman out onto the street and taken away the gift her loving son had meant for his mother's birthday. And heard about it from her friend Sarah, who called one evening. Hey, what's going on with you guys? Roger's mom called me yesterday, cried on the phone for an hour, saying how heartless you are. She's lying. That's what I figured. But she's calling everyone. Neighbors, relatives, old friends. Says you kicked her out of her own house. My house, the one she tried to steal. Sarah sighed. Got it. But you know, a lot of people believe her. Everyone pities the poor old lady. Let them. I don't care. But in truth, and did care. She knew that if she didn't counter the lies now, it would be too late later. A reputation could be destroyed in days and take years to rebuild. She created a folder in her cloud drive and uploaded all her evidence, footage from the security cameras showing Dorothy entering the house without permission, recordings of Roger's conversations with his mother, the receipt for the wallpaper, the clinic report proving Dorothy was healthy, and the bank statement showing the withdrawal of $18,000. Then she sent the link to everyone who had called asking questions. No explanations, no commentary, just the link and a short message. Before you judge, look at the facts. The effect exceeded all expectations. People opened the folder, looked through the files, and called back, this time to apologize. Some even offered support. Neighbors from her city apartment wrote to say they'd always known Dorothy was quarrelsome and weren't surprised she tried to deceive her daughter-in-law. Roger's relatives turned their backs on her too. His sister Pamela called and said, I warned you. That's our mom, always the same. Now she's calling me every day asking for money for a lawyer. I told her no. She's really planning to sue? She's trying. But every lawyer drops her once they see the documents. Her case is hopeless. And thanked her for the update and hung up. Dorothy really did go around trying to find a lawyer willing to represent her, but everyone she met told her the same thing. The case was unwinnable, and it would be a waste of money to even try. Still, she wouldn't quit. She went door to door collecting signatures for some kind of petition in defense of an elderly woman who'd been deceived. She tried to get local media interested, even filed a complaint with the county prosecutor accusing Ann of fraud. The prosecutor's office reviewed all the documents and declined to open a case, citing no evidence of a crime. They even issued a formal warning to Dorothy for making false accusations. After that, the mother-in-law finally quieted down. She must have realized continuing the fight was pointless. But her real humiliation came at work. The principal of Franklin Elementary, where she was a front desk attendant, called her in. He wasn't happy that the school's concierge had become locally infamous for trying to seize someone else's house. It cast an ugly shadow on the school's reputation. They didn't fire her, but they made it clear she'd better withdraw her resignation. With a scandal like this attached to her name, retirement wouldn't be easy, and no one else would hire her. Dorothy had no choice but to stay on the job. Every morning at 6 she dragged herself across town to sit behind the reception desk until evening. 60 years old, still working, with no right to rest, and no country house. And heard about it from Carol, the co-worker who also worked at the school. Can you believe it? Your mother-in-law's like a leper here now. Everyone knows what she did. The teachers talk about it, even the kids gossip and tell their parents. It's rough for her. She brought it on herself. Yeah, I guess. Still, kind of sad to watch, an old woman who wanted a better life and ended up with nothing. And felt no sympathy. Dorothy had made her choices, deception, greed, manipulation, and now she was paying the price. The court hearing took place on May 15th, and arrived with Jason. Roger came with his lawyer, and with his mother. Dorothy sat on the bench in a black dress, playing the part of the grieving old victim. The hearing lasted 3 hours. Roger's lawyer tried to argue that the house had been bought with joint marital funds, citing 12 years of marriage, a shared household, and mutual savings. Jason calmly dismantled every claim, showing documents that proved otherwise, the bonus Ann had earned personally, statements from her individual bank account, and the inheritance from her grandmother. He demonstrated that every cent used for the house had come from Ann's private assets, not from the marital budget. The judge reviewed the documents carefully, asking clarifying questions. When the recordings of Roger and his mother were played, the tension in the courtroom spiked. Dorothy's voice echoed through the speakers, clear, unmistakable. She knew perfectly well the house belonged to Ann, yet she still plotted to move in. And Roger backed her up. The defense lawyer tried to challenge the legality of the recordings, but Jason proved that spouses have the right to record conversations in shared vehicles without violating privacy laws. Dorothy turned bright red. Roger stared at the floor. The judge withdrew to deliberate. 40 minutes later, he returned and read the verdict. The claim of Roger Henderson to recognize the house as joint marital property is hereby denied. The property is declared the personal asset of Ann Pollock, purchased with her individual funds. The demand for division of property is denied. The claim for moral damage compensation is denied. The counterclaim of Ann Pollock for the return of $18,000 obtained by deception is upheld. Roger Henderson is ordered to repay the plaintiff the sum of $18,000 within 6 months. The marriage between Ann Pollock and Roger Henderson is dissolved. The judge stamped the decision and handed it to the clerk. Roger sat motionless, staring into space. Dorothy sniffled, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief, and stood up and walked out. Jason caught up to her in the hallway. "Congratulations. Total victory." They shook hands and walked down the courthouse steps and out into the sunlight. The day was warm and calm. She got into her car and drove home, to Riverside, to her house. As she drove, she thought about everything that had happened. 12 years of marriage, over. Not by her choice, but she felt no regret. Roger had made he'd chosen his mother's interests over hers, and this was the result. That evening, Ann came home, kicked off her shoes, poured herself a glass of wine, and stepped out onto the terrace. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. Birds sang in the garden, a dog barked somewhere far away. Ann sat back in her chair and took a sip. For the first time in years, she felt completely at peace. No tension, no drama, no manipulation. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. She opened it. "Good evening, Ms. Pollock. My name is Michael Thompson. I'm a realtor specializing in high-end country properties. I recently learned that you own the house in Riverside. I have a client willing to offer you $750,000. The market's climbing fast. It's a very profitable deal. If you're interested, I'd love to meet and discuss the details." And read the message twice. $750,000. She'd bought the house for $560,000. In a year, its value had risen almost $200,000. Not bad at all. She looked out over her yard, the neat lawn, the apple trees, the terrace. The house she had fought for. The house she had defended from greedy relatives. The house that had become a symbol of her independence. She typed her reply. "Thank you for the offer. The house is not for sale." She sent the message and blocked the number, and finished her wine and leaned back in the chair. This house was her victory, not just a piece of property, but proof that she could protect what was hers, stand up to manipulation, and defend her boundaries, even if it meant losing her family. $750,000 was a lot of money. But some things are worth more than money, like self-respect, or the right to live your life the way you believe is right, without bending to anyone's expectations. And stood up and walked across the yard. She touched the bark of the apple tree and breathed in the scent of freshly cut grass. All of this belonged to her, earned honestly, defended fiercely, preserved despite every attempt to take it away. The following months passed quietly, and settled into the house, worked, and spent time with friends. She never saw Roger again. Mutual acquaintances said he was working 2 jobs now, as a truck driver and a mover, trying to pay her back the money he owed. Dorothy had also disappeared from her life. According to rumors, the mother-in-law had become a recluse, stopped talking to neighbors, avoided public events, and went straight home after her shifts at the front desk. And felt no sympathy. Everyone got what they deserved. Roger, a debt and a broken marriage. Dorothy, disgrace and loneliness. And she herself, freedom and her home. One autumn evening, as Ann sat on the terrace with a book, her phone rang. It was Pamela. "Hey, just wanted to check in. How are you doing?" "I'm fine. Working, living. You know, Mom tried to make peace with me recently. Asked to borrow money. I said no. You did the right thing. She says Roger won't give her anything either. He's paying you back and she's struggling to get by. Then she'll have to cut expenses. Or get a side job." Pamela sighed. Harsh, but fair. "Anyway, I just wanted to say, you did great. You didn't let them break you. I wasn't that strong once and almost lost my apartment. Good for you for standing your ground." "Thanks." They chatted a bit more about life, work, and plans, then said goodbye. And put the phone down and tried to return to her book, but she couldn't focus. Her thoughts drifted back. A year ago, she had bought this house, dreaming of a peaceful life in the countryside. She never imagined she'd have to defend it from her own family. She never thought her husband could lie and betray her. Never believed her mother-in-law could be so greedy, so shameless. But it had all happened, and she had survived it. She hadn't broken, hadn't given in, hadn't let herself be manipulated. Now she sat on the terrace of her own house, drinking tea and enjoying the silence. Alone. No husband who turned out to be weak. No mother-in-law who tried to take what wasn't hers. No lies, no drama, no games. Just her, her home, and the quiet life she had built with her own hands. And looked toward the sunset. The sky blazed with gold and red. Beautiful, peaceful, right. She smiled and took another sip of tea. This house was worth every penny, every sleepless night, every ounce of stress, because it wasn't just a house. It was proof that she could protect herself and what was hers. And no one, not her husband, not her mother-in-law, not anyone, would ever dare to take that from her again. And finished her tea and went back inside. Her house. Her victory. Her life. No regrets. No looking back. Only forward.